Hey everyone, welcome to Myopia Movies. This week we are talking Timecop, because no one has ever wanted to skip this year and go back in time. In the meantime, thanks for listening, recording, joining us on social networking, reviewing. In general, thanks for listening. Happy New Year, guys. What a strange week it's been. Welcome to Myopia Movies. This week we do our first non-Harry Potter movie in a month and a half. We've been recording for a while. So
you mean Jean-Claude Van Damme's not a wizard?
I mean, he kind of is. You're a wizard, Jean-Claude. I mean, I will say, what a perfect all-guys panel to come back with the most masculine movie. I mean, this is 1994 in a nutshell. That, like, weird, like, Jerry Seinfeld-esque poof he's got working with. Oh my god!
It's not quite a mullet, but it's almost there.
This is a Sunday evening dad movie where dad just like retreats to the man cave and is like, "Don't bother me."
Oh, dude, this is a total dad afternoon. This is a dad for noon. Anyway, we should get to this. I mean, we've all talked already. So I'm Nick Hoffman, host of Myopia. Happy New Year! This is coming out January 7th. And on panel we have.
Hi, I'm John, host of Mission Briefing, and here just for the laughs.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say for the kicks.
Just for the missed an opportunity.
Mic drop. Hello, this is Daniel, contributor to Popdose, and currently traveling back in time to steal pirate gold.
There you go. And
Jeremy.
And we're all back together again. It's been a while since I haven't had to talk about a fucking wizard. So let's talk about another kind of wizard. Time travel.
Nonsensical time travel, let's keep in mind.
Who wants to take the plot?
For the most part, it's somewhat
okay.
sound, yeah.
I mean, then he turns into a jib jab at the end, but we'll get there. I mean, I have not seen special effects like this since bad music videos from 1987.
I mean, it actually reminded me of the Super Mario movie.
It does.
Early 90s full body special effects. It is something to behold.
It has never looked good.
We'll get there.
But I mean, to be fair...
Well, it's Timecop. We can start at the end and then work our way forward.
Oh, good point. We can't start at the end because it hasn't happened yet.
That's true. So, who wants to give us the plot synopsis? Jeremy?
Sure.
Please.
So, this is the not-too-distant future of 1994. La la la. And time travel has been discovered. So, there's a part of the government that wants to start an agency, kind of like the FBI, that monitors time travel to make sure no one goes back and screws things up. So, of course, who else would you get to be the star of your time travel agency but Jean-Claude Van Damme? And shortly before he, takes the job, his wife is murdered. And yeah, some time fuckery goes on. He goes back and discovers a plot to steal the presidency, which, man, this movie hits harder in 2020.
Some of the lines this guy said, I'm like, that sounds awfully familiar.
Like, watching this, I was like, holy shit, Trump must think this guy's the good guy.
Probably. I mean, and his name is Senator McComb, and at one point he goes, "You ever seen the inside of the president's limo?" To like an aide, and she goes, "No," and she goes, "I'll send you a Polaroid." And then he leaves her. Like,
wasn't there also a line like, "We need a president so rich he doesn't bow to special interests"? Which was his whole thing. There's a part where he says, "You don't need facts, you don't need the media, you need TV," and I was like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. By the way, Ron Silver, who plays the villain and does a wonderful hammy job. He's amazing. Yeah.
If this hadn't have been the 90s, I would have said he's the perfect 80s villain.
Yeah. He was a pretty big conservative towards the end of his life. He was. I think he spoke at the 2004 Republican National Convention. Might have, yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this character was seen as a role model for a lot of people. Oh, yeah.
I mean, and this cast is... I mean... Is this the most non-canon movie of all time? I mean,
this is way too good for a canon movie.
But I mean, like, the explosions, like, for no reason, the ray guns, this is, like, if they broke into song, this is Menachen's, like, this is his Spartacus.
I'm on Nick's side here. This is the most non-canon movie ever.
I mean, because it's got Jean-Claude Van Damme and then character actors. Like, Mia Sara's in this, of course. But, like, Bruce McGill, was he ever in a canon movie? If he wasn't, he should have been. Like, Gloria Reuben's also in this. She's really good. But anyway, so I mean, smash cut. Like, we open in, like, the Oval Office or something, and he's like, did you know time travel exists?
Well, we actually open with a robbery scene where some guy with automatic weapons holds up a shipment of
in
Confederate...
Gainesville, Georgia.
Yes.
A shipment of Confederate gold, and he just, like, kills 2 wagons full of people and brings the gold back to the present day.
Which was a pretty fantastic scene.
Yes.
Like, it says all you need to know that people are going back in time from the not-so-distant future and robbing people. Because when you have time travel, that's all you want to do, just rob people.
Like
Meanwhile-
Time Bandits taught us.
Meanwhile, a slightly younger and much wealthier Michael Crichton was like, did someone read Westworld? Or someone...
Yeah.
Because this is very, like, it reminds me of the 70s Westworld, because they're like, it's the Confederacy, they have Confederate gold. He shoots him up with a laser gun. So you're like, what's going on now, Ron Silver?
This is one of the things that I couldn't fully appreciate as a kid. I was used to, you know, all the Bond villains who want to take over the world by building all these, you know, laser weapons. This is a guy who wants to steal money so he can buy the presidency. I mean, that's...
And not just buy it, like he can buy TV ads
Yeah.
to run for president.
Yeah, this was like... I don't know if they meant to be, you know, prescient in doing that, but like, this is smart.
The trend was there at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, Ross Perot did the same thing. He like bought a bunch of airtime in 1992 and would like have 30-minute infomercials.
Well, more
airing on
recently,
primetime.
what's his face? Bloomberg bought
Yeah.
what, $500,000 or $500 million worth of TV ads and went nowhere. So TV is not, granted, we're 10 years in the future from when this movie says it is. So TV probably was bigger back then.
Well, but I mean, and to be blunt, I mean, we're one sexy saxophone. I mean, this is 94. If you told me Bill Clinton did the soundtrack for this, because it's nothing but saxophone and talking about TV, like, we're pretty okay for the presidency at this point.
Well, sock it to me, Nicholas.
Oh, and by the by, we should get to that. At one point, Ron Silver, who's Senator McComb running for president, he goes, I'm going to win by 28% of the vote. Bigger than anyone since Nixon.
Yep.
And I'm just like, do you not realize comparing yourself to Nixon is a bad thing?
That's the joke.
Yeah, but he finds nothing funny about that. He's like, you know, my idol Nixon. Like, he has, you know, get me Roger Stone-esque tattoo around his balls of Nixon, so the jowls jiggle properly.
Well, like Jeremy said, being prescient here, I mean, we've also had to deal with somebody who looks up to Nixon as his ultimate idol for the past 5 years or so.
Although I would say in the last few months, he's looked slightly more like James Buchanan, not doing shit as the country's on fire.
Yeah.
But in the meantime...
Got to work on that handicap.
That's right. You know what? This episode's going to come out 13 days before he leaves office, so...
He's scheduled to leave office.
That's right.
There is a difference.
Well, I want to see him dragged out kicking and screaming.
That's going to be funny. Like a real-life version of the Colbert bumpers, The Road from the White House.
Yeah.
But no, I do like, I think it was a Colbert bit, but like they show the U-Haul truck and he's giving a speech that he's not stepping down, he's not resigning, and there's just people throwing shit in the back of the trash.
Anyway, back to the movie. Did anybody else...
Watch the movie?
Did anybody else notice this was produced by Sam Raimi?
I saw
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
I could almost exactly point out the scenes where Sam had opinions on.
Yeah.
Well, there were no dolly shots anywhere. I mean, what scenes were those?
Well, there was a scene where someone turned into a goo monster. So there's that, and he shoots a gun through himself. Like, so that might have been a scene that Sam Raimi had input on. Also, there was unnecessarily complicated kind of body horror shit as someone flew through time. But we'll get there. We will get there. So the rules of time travel here are 1. The same matter cannot occupy the same place.
I'm going to cut in here real quick. We
sure
get
you
this... I'm going to do that several times because that's what I do to Nick because he just rambles. There's a scene after this where somebody like has a classified meeting with a bunch of senators and generals where they talk about like the rules of time travel, like Nick said, and one of them is the same matter can't occupy the same space, which makes no goddamn sense, but we'll get there. And then he's talking about like, okay, you can't travel to the future because it hasn't happened yet. You can travel to the past. And then you can also change things in the past that will affect the present.
Right.
And he's the one advocating for like a Timecop Bureau. I forget what it's actually called in the movie.
The TEC.
Yes, yes.
Basically
And-
the Time FBI.
basically. And his rationale behind it, even though this is kind of a little weird, was kind of a Cold War holdover. It's like, okay, well, we need to set this up now because otherwise the enemy might get this technology and they're not going to be nice.
Yeah, and they used the comparison to the atom bomb.
Right.
You know.
Well, and they scared us because it was 1994, and it was, what if Saddam Hussein went back in time and got the nuclear bomb first? And you're like, my goodness, that mustache would be everywhere.
and we know Saddam turned out to be our bestie in the end.
I was going to say, it turned out
absolutely.
fine for everyone. I mean, everyone needs a good scapegoat.
They do.
But like, yeah, I mean, and this is the meeting that we were kind of talking about. It's this, young... Everything is filmed in Dutch angles in this scene, which is great. But we like look up at this young black dude who's like, Senator, pans over. It's already happened. And he's like, someone tried to pay for like some securities in Zurich in like Confederate gold.
Which, okay, speaking of time travel in this movie, the TEC later gets their hands on it. It's like, we carbon dated it, so we know it's authentic. If it was brought forward from the past, even if you could carbon date gold, which I don't think you can, then how would that work? That means it's exactly the age that it was when you brought it forward in time.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Much like the movie, like you were saying, like you can't change the future because it hasn't happened, but you can change the past, which changes the present, which technically hasn't happened.
And you can travel from the past to the present.
It's like assuming time is like a linear line up to the present, which is the only time that matters.
And also, let's be blunt here. It's the government. This is a cop seizing money kind of thing. Because it's not like they're going to go back and give Confederacy money, right? So they're like, we're going to keep this for safekeeping because we've got to buy a bunch of these time cars and we don't know where the money's coming from.
Which looked very much like that. I can't remember the name of it right now, but the movie from MST3K with Big McLarge Huge.
And Space Mutiny.
Space Mutiny.
It's very Space Mutiny.
It's like a triangle on a track, and that's their time machine.
Dude, I mean, this is complicated shit because it's like clothes change, and he ends up in the past, and you're just like, okay.
Like there was a TV show on ABC, I think, that Kelly used to watch before it was canceled. That was about time travel.
Timeless is what that was
Timeless,
called.
which was decent.
That was much better.
But they had to dress in clothes of the time that they're going to. You can't go in 1994 clothes to the Civil War and expect not to stand out.
Plus, they had to grab a time relevant currency.
Right.
I like that show.
Likewise,
I miss
when
that
they
show.
came back, their first step was a debrief. What has changed now versus when you went back?
Do you remember that episode?
So it's like Doc Brown with Wikipedia, just like
Kind of like Jean-Claude Van Damme comes back from
dude, and at the end of this movie,
one of his trips, and he's like, Senator McCabe, McComb.
John McCain?
He didn't own this company. What are you talking about? He owned this the whole way. What are you talking about?
Well, another thing about Timeless that was great. Do you remember that episode where they went back in time and met Ian Fleming?
Literally
yes.
No.
Fantastic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look it up. I mean, I'm not against it.
I mean, it's a decent show.
ABC?
It's on
ABC,
Hulu
now.
CBS,
So it's on Hulu.
one of the
ABC,
networks.
it's on Hulu.
And it's a decent show. I believe it's canceled now.
Shit.
It lasted 2 seasons, maybe.
Two seasons
So
and a movie.
essentially,
2 seasons and a movie. Yeah.
So essentially, it's just every episode where Picard's on the holodeck. Oh, Mr. Data, I'm going to have to dress up like Victorian England yet again.
Yeah.
I mean...
And I mean, there's the obvious, overarching, someone's trying to take control of the past to control the present. It's like, well,
okay, so if it's a time travel show, how many episodes had Nazis in it?
Surprisingly few, from what I
think the first one is the Hindenburg, which technically is Nazis.
Technically Nazis. John Copsey's new spin-off, technically Nazis.
Which this movie doesn't have any of.
No,
you go back in time.
I mean, you
and
have Confederates, so
you do, but
have
they have all of time and space. We start out in the Civil War in the middle of nowhere, but then we go to 1929 New York.
Well, and then we have a
for
sexy
stock
Malsey.
manipulation, and then when we go back in time, we go either to his house, which is enormous for a cop's
Yes.
Incredible.
Yes.
Well, especially since he starts out as a mall cop.
But then we go to 1980s warehouse.
No,
Which,
there were 3 years.
You have all of time and space, and you go back to these settings?
Well, they do mention that there was a part in Libya or something. That's where they tried to use the Confederate gold to
Yeah.
buy something. So
Let's get back a little bit. First and foremost, that house is. When I saw it, I felt like Frank Grimes. Good Lord, this is a dream house. How can you afford this?
Well,
Anyway,
let me do just one thing.
Old grimy.
The end of the meeting is Senator McComb says he's going to observe it from his committee. Like, they call him in because they think he would be a good person to run it, and he immediately sees the potential, right? And this is where Bruce McGill, who at the time was the DC chief of police, gets tapped, right? We then smash cut to the mall.
right, and Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't a mall cop. He was a member of the DC Police Force. And
They're in a mall, and
he approaches his wife from behind,
which happens later in the next scene too.
Right. Again, time
stuff.
travel, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff. So
wibbly-wobbly.
anyway, but that was great where he's like just saying random things to her, and
Well, they're acting
Yeah.
like they're strangers. It's a
Right.
kink thing.
They're playing a sex game.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Now, if my husband doesn't show up right away, I guess I'm going to have to bang you." And he's like, "You will show well."
one of the lines is also, "Well, there's never enough time to satisfy a woman," and I was just like, "You're doing something wrong."
No, A, and two, this is a man with sex tapes, right? Like, because later, after she gets killed, we see, like, they're trying to put together a birdhouse, and he just starts having sex with her, and you're just like, that camera didn't turn off.
Well,
My
there's a scene later after she dies, which we already said. The old house blows up.
Dude, the house turns to dust.
Yeah.
Again, this is a canon movie.
It's like a nuke
Yeah.
goes off in that house.
Well, there's a scene later in the futuristic year of 2004
in the
Holy
future.
shit.
where he's watching home videos of his wife, and it's exactly the scene that Steven Spielberg ripped off for Minority Report.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you just imagine a younger, the year after Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg popping popcorn, watching this, and he's like, "That's a good idea for a movie." I don't know. That was like halfway to George Lucas. I don't know what I was doing there. But anyway, so they're in the mall. This guy steals a purse, and I mentioned this because it apparently becomes important later. He steals a purse from an old lady. Jean-Claude Van Damme does a split kick right in this dude's face, and he goes, "Read what does it say?" And he goes, "Wolverines," and he goes, "No, read between the lines." But I should change my life or whatever. Whatever nonsense he says.
I should get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and then he returns it, and we notice two creepy, beskeletted guys up on the second deck.
Dressed in very
They're
90s.
great. That's like the
fatigues.
typical 80s villain. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you just look at them and you know.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, of course. And they have. Speaking of movies we've done before, it's like Mighty Ducks, where he has the greased back hair. And he goes, "You look like a villain who just got out of the shower," and you're just like, right, because his hair, he has like the rat tail, and it's greasy for some reason. He's like put,
And he's wearing very bright
was-
colors
Yeah.
underneath a dark trench coat.
It was a mandatory. If you had a rat tail, your hair had to be greasy.
You know who's missing from this movie? Robert Davi. It's 1994. He would have been a time heavy, like the heaviest time heavy.
I was thinking Fisher Stevens, but
I mean,
he would be the guy who came up with the time
See, this
machine.
is how time travel works.
The most Indian, non-Indian man ever.
I mean, he could be the dude who was jerking off when they the guy in charge of the computer screen. He's like, when Bruce McGill comes in, he's like, "I wasn't doing anything, boss."
Well, that's the guy from The Matrix where he sees the binary. He's like, blonde, brunette, redhead.
Yeah.
You mean Cypher? I'm pretty sure that was.
Yeah.
Well, Mouse was the guy who programmed the woman in the red dress.
Who was the sweaty guy from Twister? Because it also looks like him.
Carrie Elways.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
No. Scott Bellis is the character, I think. And I'm just talking about the guy who takes the hubcap to the head when they're at the movie theater.
Oh, yeah.
Was I right? Oh, no, you know who he is? This is just for me, maybe. But he's Max Fennick in X-Files. He's a regular character in X-Files who has seizures because the aliens have abducted him. That's literally for me. No one else, it's fine.
Is he one of the lone gunmen or something?
No, he's not. He's just a regular character. Apparently, he's a acting coach. And he's a Canadian, and so they're like,
acting coach?
we need to... Well, I mean, he's a Canadian acting coach, and They're like, we need actors, and he was so popular
See,
they brought him
it's-
back like 6 or 7
In America, it's pronounced about everybody. About.
No. Drop that jaw. About closer.
I'm not
Better.
your friend, buddy.
Now we're gonna replace that, buddy, with asshole. I'm not your friend, asshole. I'm not your friend.
But that's a swear.
Oh, yeah.
All right, buddy. Here's some French fries with gravy on them, buddy. Okay, pal. Okay.
Where's my
I'm
cheese
not your
curds?
pal,
I need my
guy.
cheese curds.
He's there, like shakily holding a thing of maple syrup.
So, two things happen after the mall scene. We get a sex scene complete with a very, very sexy saxophone.
Oh, dude, and that ass. His
ass.
ass is just working, and you're just like, oh my goodness. And I mean, we see Mia Sarah's boobs, but also his ass is just magnificent. I mean, this is. It turns on a dime too. Not that like the movies in this era didn't have nudity for no reason. I mean, stay tuned. We're probably gonna do
Nudity is always a reason for
Well, right, and we're gonna do True Lies soon, which also has a sexy dance in it. But like
Not nudity, though.
a smash cut, like we go directly from well, if your husband's not going to show up, I will show you the few English words I use, and then pow to banging.
Let me
It
show you
makes-
these words.
It makes as much sense as the smash cut in the room.
He stole this scene. He stole this scene exactly. Tommy Wiseau down to the ass thrusting, like
Yes.
oh god. And then in the post-coital bliss, she says, "I have to tell you something," which immediately means she's pregnant. Like
Of course
that's
it
how
does.
that
Yeah.
translates every time.
We don't find that out until later, but
no,
But we know.
But you
Come
know.
The
you know.
second they
She
have
has something urgent to say to him immediately after having sex.
well, how would she know immediatly after the act?
because she was yeah okay.
Yeah, okay. Do we have to
When a
have
man
that
loves a
discussion?
woman-
I'll
I
take
mean,
you aside.
JCVD's got that super sperm.
There you
true.
go.
They did the splits, and then you
Yeah.
know, it happened.
And he pulled the same move at her at every store this week. They were at a grocery store, at the pharmacy, at the UPS store, like literally at the post office. He's like, you know, my husband does not usually wear a strap. Like, I don't know why I made her his voice, but you know, it happens sometimes when I'm confused.
And here we get the trope of this movie that the wife dies. So he's called immediately after having sex. She says, "I need to tell you something," and he says,
like-
"Can it wait? I just got a call from the chief. I need to go now."
And then terrorists break into his house and blow it up, and
They shoot him, and it blows up, and
she's still in
she's
there.
she's inside.
Yeah, and he does the thing like, I forgot I was wearing a vest. And he has like 3 holes in him, and then the house turns to dust. I mean, it's this old, beautiful Victorian home, and it's just a plank of wood and a fireball.
Was
It is.
Was it the same house from Beetlejuice? It kind of looked like it.
I mean, it is a classic old
Like
Victorian.
it's almost like the Addams Family house. Like it's got that steeple going on, and it's very Victorian.
This looking at it meant that JCVD was on some training day bullshit because there is no way he could have afforded
Dude.
that on a cop's salary.
My God.
She must have had an awesome job
Yes.
that we're just not told about.
That's right.
She's like heiress to the Rockefeller fortune or something.
I mean, she also has no lines in this other than, "Are you my husband?"
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Explosion! And he's like, "You had news to tell me, but you did not tell me."
Like, and to anyone who's confused, this is Mia Sarah, who was Ferris Bueller's girlfriend. She's not the best actress ever. But in this movie, she literally only has maybe a half dozen lines. And half of them are saying, "I need to tell you something," or "I don't believe you."
But she looks amazing saying them.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does. And I mean, to anyone else who had a crush on her from Ferris Bueller, it's like, this is a movie to watch.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And she's in another, I guess, stay tuned, but she's also in Legend, which is
Oh, wow. Yeah.
with
there you go.
Tim
Yeah.
Curry and as the Deville. We need to do that one too. That's a stay tuned.
Well, speaking of smash cuts, though, with what this movie does, immediately after that scene, the home invasion scene, we smash cut to 1929 Black Thursday.
Yes, that's right. And a dude in a very, very padded shoulder jacket.
As was the style at the time.
Right. Cracks into this office somewhere in, downtown Manhattan or whatever it is, and opens a briefcase and pulls out.
Walks over the dead body in the sidewalk of another stockbroker who had thrown himself off the boat.
Yeah,
there
no,
are
it's a real
scenes.
tragedy.
There are scenes of like people flinging themselves out the window, which didn't really happen, but in real life. But anyway,
Many
artistic
people did
license.
commit suicide in the
Yeah, I'm
A
sure-
couple
yeah, a
did,
lot
but it
did,
wasn't like
yeah.
some widespread thing, is my understanding.
It does a pretty good job, I guess, of establishing that this is Black Friday. Like
Yes.
things are going really bad for stocks. This rando walks up into his office where he's a big wig, and he pulls out 1929 New York Times, and he pulls out 2004 USA Today.
Yeah.
Yes. And he starts circling stuff and like demanding his secretary buy certain stocks.
That's right. Which, again, I will say, this is for a stupid movie, a smart idea.
Yeah.
Because you're like, they're actually going about subtle shit,
Yeah.
right? Like,
They're not stealing Confederate bullion and using it in Zurich in 2004.
right.
They're-
to
they're-
help the Libyans. The Libyans,
The
Marty,
Libyans,
the
yeah.
Libyans. But yeah, right?
Here's where we find out the guy who created the time machine in this movie is Doc Brown.
Right.
Right.
Right. But that's the
This is
guy.
what you should do. It's like the Philip J. Fry thing where you put a penny in a bank account in 1900 and come 2000, it's worth $1 million.
$3.4 billion, if
Exactly.
I recall.
Well, and again, it's like what Marty should not have done is buy the almanac and bet on shit.
Yeah.
It's what he should have done is go back to 55 and buy like Superman #1,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Or
the
38, or yeah.
or whatever.
Whatever,
right?
yeah.
And like that's what he's doing. He's like, trust me, buy 100,000 shares of this one. It was like Midwest Oil Company or whatever nonsense it was. And what a good idea. And then Jean-Claude Van Damme shows up and he's like, no, it's too late. Like he does a Logan's Run thing. He's like, no.
Now,
It's not my time.
There's so much weird things that happen in this scene. First and foremost, before we get emails, it was, I believe, 4.3 billion in Futurama. But anyway, after that, there's this whole thing about going back in time and manipulating things so that the present changes. But casual things are referenced, like in 1929, to the Denzians of that year. That would make no sense. Wouldn't that change things? For example,
His karate kick.
well, I saw Tyson beating Spinks on TV. I think that's something Van Damme says,
Yeah.
or the stockbroker.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that do something? It's like, well, who is Tyson? Who is
What's
Spinks?
TV?
Yeah.
What is TV?
Well, I mean, but also just like
Just his very existence changes time because he's got a corner office in a stockbroker. His very existence has changed things.
Which means he's been there also for a while.
Yes.
there he is. He's wrecking someone's bathroom, and he's like, "Oh no!" And the janitor fades into nothing. I will say though, it's a time travel movie. Don't hurt yourself here. This is
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
point to worry about.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Yeah.
you can't. Like even Back to the Future doesn't make sense. Like and
Back to the
that's a
Future-
perfect movie.
It makes more sense than this does.
So does Bill
Well,
and Ted,
policing
but-
the past is troublesome because I mean they're only dealing with people in the present, 1994 present, going back in time, changing the past, and apparently, literally everyone has access to this technology. The Iranians, the Libyans, the Russians, the Koreans.
2004 present, by the way, which is when the TEC
Right.
is up and running.
Right. And like I don't know how this technology got spread so quickly. Probably someone used it to go back in time and mess with things.
Well, I mean, considering the main plot of the movie, someone probably said, "Hey, I can make money off this," and
Yeah.
sold it.
I mean, one of the I think it was McCabe made the point. Why don't we just go back in time once to when this guy created this technology and either steal it or kill him, and then no one has access to this technology at all.
Yeah.
Then that's not an annual expense for an entirely new branch of the government, which just gets dicey the more you get onto it. Because, they say they don't want to change the present, but even in this instance, like 1929, he's dealing with this. It turns out that his ex-partner was betting on this.
That's right.
Or, sorry, not betting, playing the stock market, completely different. And then after a fight, he says, "Oh, the senator put me up to it. By the way, I'm going to jump out the window right now." And you suddenly have a body that just threw itself out of a window that has now changed the present in a way that we don't know how it changes.
We'll go over what happens right after he flings himself out the window and JCVD catches him and takes him back to 2004 so he can stand trial. But I do like the punchline of that scene where there's this Irish cop who sees him crash into a car. It's like, "Oh, tomorrow would have been a brighter day."
And he's like crossing himself, like, "Oh, Faith and Megara, a man's falling out of a window."
And he was totally going before that, "Okay, shush over here, nothing to see."
Yeah, I mean, it is something. And by the way, Ethan Suplee was in the Pussy Posse, so bite it.
But I
Editing
did
that
like
out.
their sentencing and whatever. So Jean-Claude Van Damme does take the guy back into time, back into the present, before court, and says, "Okay, tell them who did it." He says, "No, I have nothing to say in my defense." And the court sentences him to death, effective immediately. They take him back in time to literally right before he hit the ground after jumping out of the window.
It seems like an unnecessary step.
Kind of does. Kind of does. Like they could have just erased him. And
There's no jury at this trial. There's
Nope.
no lawyers.
Not
There's
even.
nothing.
Not a skosh. Because it's time law. And you see, time law, like the Old West, sometimes the marshal just gets to shoot you in the fucking head. If-
Yeah, I mean, time travel's not public
Nope.
in this universe, so yeah, you can't really have a real trial.
It's like doing a rail of blow or something. You're just like, well, I guess. Sorry.
I mean, it's very Judge Dredd. Like they just kill you. They take you back and kill you.
Not the Stallone Dread, the actual good Dread. Well, after that, we and that guy being killed, we get back to the TEC where Senator McComb is being given a tour because he's one of the biggest sponsors of the agency.
And I believe he's the head of the committee in the Senate that runs it, which
Yeah.
is what we get from the first scene.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he goes, "Hey there, Walker."
And Walker, being a DC cop with decades of experience, immediately starts acting suspicious in front of McCabe, who's his
Yeah.
prime suspect.
Yeah.
This is also the scene where we find out the whole matter can't occupy the same space at the same time, which makes no sense, but we'll get there.
Well, you need a way to turn him into goo. I mean, I played Descent in 1994. I mean, this looks like a Descent glob.
Yeah.
I texted the boys today. It was like playing Doom 3 all over again.
It's nothing but teeth and eyes.
It looked, worse than Doom 3.
It did look
Well,
worse than
yeah,
Doom. I mean,
yeah.
Doom 3 almost had decades to come out.
2004, I think?
Yeah, decades
So
later.
about right. Yeah.
So it's the future.
Yeah.
It's where that future USA Hooray came from.
Mhm.
Remember when USA Today mattered? Me neither. So, I mean, at this point, advances in the plot, someone. Jeremy?
So yeah, JCVD starts asking McComb, like, "Hey, so what's going on?" You know, there's no subtlety about it. But then again, we already know that McComb is a bad guy because he's played by Ron Silver.
Right.
So JCVD says, "Hey, I want to go back in time to investigate McComb because I'm pretty sure it's him. Since his ex-partner was just killed, they send an IA agent with him. And yeah, the shenanigans continue into the warehouse where the time travel is about to be invented, where McComb wants to kill the creator and basically take the whole company for himself.
That's right.
Well,
The IA officer is Gloria Rubin, who plays Fielding.
before that, we do get a scene with JCVD at home, where he's not only watching old home videos, and this was great because I just love how back in the day everyone thought Total Recall guessed what cars would look like in the future.
Oh yeah.
But people invade his home, and this is where we meet the internal affairs agent, where some people break in to kill JCVD, including this Japanese assassin who's like trying to stab him to death, and he gets killed by the water on the floor, and then they electrocute him with a live wire.
With, he has like a taser.
50,000 volts, motherfucker.
Right.
Have a
And
nice
this is where
day.
he is like standing in the water in his kitchen. He jumps up, does a
The split kick onto the counter.
Yeah, between like the counter and the island in his kitchen, and instead the dude gets electrocuted. It is glorious.
Yeah.
It's a good fight scene
Yeah, it's
because he's just in his boxers and beating the crap out of these two guys.
Also, speaking of prescient, I believe there's a news report in this scene that makes a reference in the U.S. to a white supremacist party.
Yep.
Am I misremembering?
Which has like the potential to win 10% of the vote.
Right.
yeah.
Which is why this movie is not as predictive as you think, because they would have just gone for Ron Silver's character,
Who was trailing in the polls.
who was trailing in the polls at this point. That's right.
Apparently, he's less than the white supremacist party.
That's right. I mean, if he could only get the white supremacist vote, I mean, like, could you
Right.
imagine? Could you imagine?
Oh, that's certainly not a big enough voting block to make you president.
That's
Certainly not.
Certainly not enough to keep you there.
You know what? Turns out.
Well, that's where we meet the internal affairs agent, and that's where we go back to TEC and get the first time travel scene.
Yeah, really? There's only two times on the jet ski thing, but I guess that's really all you need. But it
was a decent scene.
Yeah.
Like they say, like she says, like something along the lines of like, "What's gonna happen?" or "What should I do?" And Jean-Claude Van Damme points in front of him and says, "See those 2 red spots on the wall there?
Yeah.
Try not to be them."
Yeah.
Right before that, we do meet the Twister guy who is having a VR sex.
Dude, again, porno at work, guy. Like, I mean, I guess that's the problem with working on a secret project. Like, you can't fire him.
Where's HR? Come on. You just wipe his memory, throw him back in the past, and like on the Titanic or something.
That's right. And now he doesn't like porno. Turns out.
Oh boy.
But yeah. So,
but like you were saying about gratuitous sex scenes in the 90s, like
yeah,
there's no other reason for this sex scene to happen except she's just.
I mean, hey, someone got an
VR.
idea for it, and now it's a thing. So.
It's the future.
Yeah.
Oculus Rift. You can watch pornography on it.
Yep.
Like, and again,
Little did we know this is where the idea for Oculus Rift came from.
and it's very funny because again, I was looking down, kind of taking notes, and I look up. I'm like, nudity again? Like, it's such like a weird quick cut to pornography.
Yeah.
Well, they had to justify the R rating somehow.
Well, I mean,
This
like,
is a pretty extreme movie, somewhat.
Yeah.
like I was telling Nick when I arrived, like I had apparently never seen this movie before. I had been conflating this movie with Demolition Man, which had very similar, just random sex scenes. Like someone calls in, it's a sexting basically, video sexting. It's like, oh, sorry, wrong number. It's like, oh yeah, okay,
That was
yeah,
something.
yeah. Okay.
Demolition Man, better movie.
Oh,
I
by
say
far.
that.
Hard disagree.
Thank you.
I don't know. This was a movie. Demolition Man. I haven't seen it in decades.
I will
Probably holds up.
I will take the charisma of JCVD over Sylvester Stallone any day of the week.
Not
You
Wesley
can't
Snipes,
understand
though.
either
Yeah,
one
but
of them.
not over the charisma of Wesley Snipes, though.
I mean, Wesley
No.
Snipes is
I
pretty
mean,
damn
but if
awesome.
we're ranking our
Yeah,
stars,
yeah, yeah.
Wesley Snipes is a much better villain than this
although
guy.
Ron Silver or Wesley Snipes,
Wesley
it's
Snipes.
Snipes, right?
Yeah.
It has to be. So
Yeah.
like that's the difference. Now, if JCVD against Wesley Snipes, both of them can do the martial arts.
Now,
better movie.
Sandra Bullock or Fielding as a sidekick.
Sandra Bullock.
Sandy Bullock,
Yeah.
but she must have been hell to work with.
Well, Sandra
I
Bullock,
think that
what do
was
you
one of
expect?
her first movies, so she wouldn't have had a
Yeah,
lot
right
of clout.
before Speed.
Yeah.
The year before Speed, in
Oh,
fact,
yeah.
And isn't she like an 80s head? We have to do it this season. We
Oh, yeah.
absolutely have to.
Sandra Bullock month.
Sandy for Sandy's sake.
Stay tuned for Demolition Man and Miss Congeniality 1 and 2.
Oh, God.
Oh no, and Mystic Pizza. We can
Yep.
cover Mystic Pizza.
Yep.
That was Julia Roberts.
Oh shit!
That was Julia
I'm
Roberts. You
confusing
got it
my
wrong.
redheads. No.
Sandra Bullock's a
Yeah.
brunette.
I'm confusing actresses. I mean, white people all look the same.
Speed, and then whatever that one was where her
We already
boyfriend
did
was in a
Speed and
coma.
Speed too. I'm not going to touch
Yeah.
him again. I'm not.
Well, actually, the time travel scene with that little vehicle thing is exactly, I think, an exemplar of what works about this movie and what doesn't. What works about this movie?
Hey,
and
if
what
you're fine
doesn't.
with a car going to 88 miles per hour, you're fine with the jet ski.
Yes.
Well, here's
Yes.
the thing, though. So they've set up the system where, first and foremost, the runway's not long enough so people can potentially die.
Yep, running into that brick wall.
That makes no sense.
Just make it
Why
longer.
do that?
Because it's cool, Daniel.
Well, that's exactly what doesn't work about
Also,
this movie. The second you start thinking about what's going on, you realize, what the
No. I
Who's
think
make-
this is breaking the balls of the rookie. I think that's what it is. I don't think that ever has happened, not even once, but this is the first time she's actually gone back in time. So you're breaking her balls and saying, if we fuck this up, you die.
I don't know. They met 2 guys on the way in, and it said those are the guys that scrape you off the wall. If this
Yeah.
fails.
But again, like, I think this is that everyone knows this is their first time. And at the end, like, she's half barfing, and he goes, what was that? She goes, I've done it on the simulator before, but not... like,
Speaking of which, after this scene, they land in 1994 Washington, D.C. It might have been the Potomac.
It was the reflecting pond, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
it was. Okay.
Yeah.
But then they're not in the vehicle. They just fall out of the sky.
Yeah, the vehicle
and-
just disappears.
Yeah, and then they've just got devices.
But then when they go back to the present, they're back in the vehicle.
they just have a little
Right.
doop-doop-dop thing on his like, jacket.
Yeah.
He's
Why
like,
not use the doop doop dop thing to travel then? Because apparently that's possible.
It's like a pager of some sort, isn't it?
Okay,
By the
well,
way, this is why that Timeline movie is also terrible. Like,
Well, for different reasons.
don't, because if you focus too much on how the time travel works, like, there's no way to do it. Like, it's always terrible.
well, the book makes more sense about how time travel works in
Yeah,
timeline.
because it's Michael Crichton, and he spends 400 pages about the science, and then there's like, hey, medieval knights, you remember that shit?
This is also never explained. How are they paying for stuff in the past? Because they have to talk about, oh, we arrived a day early, so we gotta wait. How are they paying for hotel rooms? How are they paying for meals? Are they
Well,
just...
maybe that's where we they obviously didn't show it, but we talked about it, where they must be given cash from the past.
If we're not shown it in the movie, it didn't happen.
Also,
Eh?
Daniel, this might blow your mind, but if you have money from 1994, it still works in 2004.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about money from 2004 working in
See, what you need to
1994.
Yeah, but
do-
you could still find a 20 from 2000 in 2004 that would work in.
But we don't see that.
To take it to crib a page from one of our compatriots, you have to read the expanded material.
That's right. Did you know that there's a TV tropes page about this? But I will also say it's entirely possible that Jean-Claude Van Damme just has to sexually pleasure his way into money,
Yes.
and then they can pay for a hotel room.
Also, this is another thing. This is a scene where stuff changes in the past because McComb shows up to meet his past self at a warehouse later. They're a time travel agency, but they're apparently unaware that stuff can change in the past and affect the future. Shouldn't they have like a 12 Monkeys set up where they're leaving phone messages to be like, oh yeah, this is what reality is supposed to be like?
Exactly.
That doesn't happen.
There's no contingency for what happens if the past changes.
Which we'll get to, because that's how this kind of...
Because I mean, well, yeah, we'll get to that. Like, he comes back and he's saying this happened and this happened and this happened, and they say, "What are you talking about? This has always been that way. Why would we do anything based on what you say, even though theoretically we shouldn't even know who you are?
Yeah.
Because this is how it's always been." That's another
timey
good whiminess.
point. How would they know who he is? Because officially he might not even be a member of TEC if the past changed.
But he was. He was still a cop in 1994. I mean,
Yeah, they knew each other in '94.
right? Because he was the chief of police for his unit. And then, by the way, if you're Bruce McGill and you're in charge of a time unit and you just found out that day, and then one of your cops kills a whole bunch of people from the future, you're asking him to be part of your time unit.
Yep.
I'm just going to throw it out there. Like, did you kill future ninjas? Because maybe you should be part of my past unit.
Well, anyway,
Bruce McGill stars in past unit.
the reason we're in the past is because Senator McComb at this point was about to sell his share of the company that he owned that was going to eventually invent $1 billion computer chip, and then
Because they got a warning in the present that said, like, this is a stage 6 warning. Like, someone's going to really mess things up on this date.
oh yeah, that's another thing. They can track like ripples, and when something happens, they just don't know what happens.
That's right.
At the TEC.
And it turns out that a senator is about to sell a bunch of stock right before a crisis happens, which, I mean, completely unfathomable.
No, it never
No,
happened.
never heard of that happening.
And so Senator McComb is about to, essentially do the power move, which is going to put him in charge of the time travel. And then, now that he's in charge of it, he wants to dissolve it. Classic defunding move, so that they can't stop him from funding his presidential campaign in 2004.
2004, McComb ends up back in 1994 and is like kills the guy who 1994 McComb was about to sell his company to.
Who
Right.
I thought was, oh shit, I just lost his name. Philip Seymour Hoffman.
It looks very much.
Very much
does.
like him. Very much like him.
I don't think it
it
was
is
him.
not.
No.
It
It
is
was not.
him.
It was 100% not.
But it's your typical. I mean, if this was RoboCop, it would be the same thing. Like, their partners having a disagreement, and then McComb comes in and just shoots the guy in the face. Future McComb shoots the guy in the face. Like, no, I didn't like dealing with him. We're in charge now.
Yeah, and at this point, it just becomes a shoot 'em up.
No one thinks
Best
it's
scene
a
in the
problem.
movie. Best
one?
scene
Yes,
in the
it's
movie.
great.
This shoot 'em up scene.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, like, this is where the movie gets going, right? Like, and then at this point, JCVD has to go to the mall to get to his wife, and
We'll get there.
But no one sees a problem with McCabe owning the company that creates time travel,
Now-
and then being on the Senate Oversight Committee of controlling that.
Hey,
time
no one's
travel.
problem with Trump appointing people to departments who are directly opposed to the mission
Okay,
of those
you're right.
departments.
I rescind my
Halliburton.
comment.
Yeah.
Dick
It would
Cheney,
never
Halliburton.
happen. It would never happen. I
Now,
apologize.
John, you've called this guy McCabe, McCain. It's
It's
McComb.
still McComb.
It's whatever. Interchangeable 80s villain who's just a few years
John
out
McClane.
of sight.
Right.
Senator
Yeah, John
McCain.
McClane. Yeah.
You know what? At this point, I totally believe that he could have been elected senator after Die Hard.
He'd be the most apathetic of all the Lex Luthors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we're also skipping ahead a little bit because they do eventually go back to the opening scene
There's a
where it's
lot
in
of
the mall.
talk in this.
I skipped through a good 20 minutes of this movie, just 30 seconds at a time. Are they talking? Okay, skip,
This is also
skip.
kind of the best
Thanks,
talky
Donald.
talk, though, because
Don Jr. was skipping ahead in the movie so you get to another action sequence.
Exactly.
Like he does in Bloodsport.
I'm not here for the talky talk. I'm here for the splits and the Belgian accent.
well, we'll get the splits, but during that scene, McComb shows up and he's talking to his past self and is telling Arrested Development style, "Hey, no touchy."
Yeah.
But anyway, also there's that great line where he's looking at his past self and going, "Do me a favor, lay off the fucking candy bars," which was great. And then after that, the internal affairs officer turns traitor and was apparently on McComb's payroll the whole time. There's also this horrible CGI scene where JCVD freezes a mook's arm and then kicks it off.
Pretty cool.
It looked like the concept is cool, but it
Yes.
looks like garbage.
Yes. I mean, it's the 90s. Everything looks like garbage.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, after that, McComb, not McComb, the internal affairs officer is shot, and JCVD goes back to 2004, and the agency's being shut down, at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's owned by McComb.
Right.
Or controlled by him or something.
Right.
Like
Well,
it's
there-
McComb Data Systems or something.
Right.
Yeah, and then JCVD has to convince Bruce McGill, hey, shit's going on. It's all McComb's fault. You got to send me back one more time. Because, at this point, with the company being dismantled, there will be no other chance to go back.
Right.
Right.
And so, pervert guys on the rocks at this point, and, they're trying to wrap everything together. We go back in time. We end up back at the Victorian, and we have, a closed-door farce.
Well,
They're trying not to see each other.
He goes back in time because he wants to see if Fielding, the internal affairs agent, lived. And she did, but not for long after he goes back. Somebody murders her in the hospital.
And then just disappears.
Yeah.
We never find out how she died or who did it.
No, yeah, the two goons from the mall put
Did
a
they?
syringe in her IV.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right.
This is also important because the hospital scene is where he finds his wife's blood sample, where it's proves she was pregnant.
Yeah.
Gasp.
Gasp. No one saw that coming earlier in this movie.
I'm just saying that's
couldn't
how the
be,
script works.
I was going to divorce you.
It could be.
You can tell that from a blood sample.
You can tell it from the goodbye sex.
And then the last 20 minutes are just chaos in the house, and it's fun.
Dude,
They go back to the mall. He stops the purse snatcher, before he even tries to grab the purse, and then he meets Mia Sara. 2004, JCVD meets Mia Sara,
And you
then
can tell
we go
because he
into
has
the house.
longer, poofier hair.
Yes.
Yeah.
The future is much poofier than current.
That's right.
The future, apparently 2004, mullets were a big thing.
I mean, it was,
Yeah.
and it's glorious. It's like someone drew bad hair on top of his head. But yeah, so and then he goes look, here's the thing. I'm from the future, and you're totally gonna live. She goes am I dead in the future? No. Are we divorced? No, we're together, totally together. I'm just making sure that keeps happening.
Do you have a picture of us? Not a recent one.
Yeah, I mean, but I still have all of my sex tapes. 35 millimeter, real classy shit. But yeah, so then they end up back at the house, and he goes, tell him what's happening. He wants her to say that she's pregnant because she never
Keep
said.
him in the house.
Keep him in the house, that's right. Because he still gets called away by Bruce McGill, presumably. Which, you know what? If time travel is invented, call me in the morning. It's not an emergency because you can go back in time. It's not a time emergency because we can go back. Like Marty taught us that at the end of Back to the Future. But yeah, so this is a fight, and Ron Silver's with younger Ron Silver, which we gotta address this for just a second. Ron Silver is tricked to be here.
I thought that was pretty clever, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But can you imagine JCVD doing a Ron Silver impersonation so convincingly?
No, you're missing it. He left a message with his receptionist that he was himself or whoever he said he was.
Hello.
Because remember, this is the 90s. They're not going to talk to each other face to face or anything like that, or even texting or whatever. He's going to call his receptionist.
That's right.
And she's going to give the message.
Calling his Senate office number is going to get his receptionist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is where we get the great Dick line, like, you ever seen the inside of the president's limo? Keep dreaming, sweetheart, or whatever he says.
Yeah.
He goes,
I'll send you a picture of it, I think.
Yeah, I'll send you a Polaroid or whatever. Something snappy. Something Ron Silver, which makes him not the villain.
The action scene here is kind of what you'd expect. There's a bunch of mooks going. Mia Sara's scared. Both of them end up on the roof. She ends up dangling from a rain gutter at one point.
And, no, dangling from Jean-Claude Van Damme, who's dangling from a rain gutter.
Yes, that's right.
And a bad guy is stepping on his fingers, which, I'm sorry, I'm falling the second that happens. I know I'm not Jean-Claude Van Damme, but someone
It's only like 2 stories. Like, you could survive that.
And he goes, there's nothing soft down there, sweetheart, or whatever. Yeah. And then Mia Sara grabs his future gun and shoots him up through the balls.
Through the gutter, yep.
Oof. Oh, that was another great scene.
And we have like a pipe bomb made of C4 that's counting down.
Also, 2004 McComb is in the house too.
Yes,
like
he's holding the wife and basically saying, if I die here, it doesn't matter because younger me is still going to go on and do big things.
That's right.
That's another weird thing about this movie. So it ends where he saves his wife. We'll get to McComb's death in a second. I know. But doesn't that mean that 1994 JCVD is just going to continue living his life with her? So if he travels back into 2004, he's just going to be a spare JCVD?
No, because he's going to kill
They're all going to die in...
The idea is to kill the younger version and then no JCVD exists. They even say that.
I know in the movie. I'm just talking about the logistics after he saves his wife.
No, the original one goes back into the future.
Well, right, but then it's a changed future, so 1994 JCVD kept living through 2004 unless he set himself up to go back in time in 2004.
No, he's still alive.
Well, presumably he still lived through the entire thing.
He did. He's just
but then he returns to the present and I guess just takes over that role.
Right. He's unconscious on the front lawn. Otherwise, he would have disappeared.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't make great sense because it's timey-wimey stuff.
They explain it completely. Daniel's just being an asshole. So, at this point, they have the time going on. Like, the bomb is about to go off.
30 seconds left.
And then the younger Silver shows up and he goes, this fucks up my plan. Like, he literally says something like that. Screws up the plan. And so, Jean-Claude Van Damme... By the way, Silver has a great insult here. You go, with kicks like that, the only job you should have is on Broadway.
Yeah.
Which is a good line. And he goes, I have another job for my kicks. And he kicks Ron Silver into Ron Silver.
I think Ron Silver is the best part of this movie. He is just hamming it up so much you could sell him at a deli.
I mean, but you gotta, because I love Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he's a physical actor.
Yeah,
like,
he can't
that's all
carry
he
a
is. He has
scene.
physicality.
And this scene bugged me just because they took too long to say their Bondian lines.
Yeah.
Like, Jean-Claude Van Damme grabs young McCabe and says something like, don't get too close to each other, or something stupid like that. And it takes 30 seconds to grab him, say that line, and then push him toward future him. At which point, future him could have just shot anyone in the room.
That's right.
And run away. But no, they just stands there.
The hand of future McComb goes through... like young McComb, they start melting together. They turn into a sludge pile made of teeth. This is Sam Raimi's one scene where he had input.
Have you ever seen the movie Society? It's that.
It's that, but with cheaper graphics.
Yes.
Significantly cheaper effects.
Very bad.
I mean, this is where you find $5 million to call in, like, someone. Like...
I mean, they would have been better off doing like a practical effect.
Peter Jackson comes in for one scene, or
the guy who did Jurassic Park, who would have been at this time at the height of his game.
Even get Nicotero in here.
They couldn't afford the guy from Jurassic Park.
Yeah, Wilson.
Stan despite
Wilson. Yeah.
in the credits, I want to say it was Sid Mead who was a consultant. Yeah, who's worked on like Blade Runner and everything. But
consultant.
But he just said, "Hey, this is probably what happened, but you have to actually make it happen."
Yeah.
And by consultant, they mean they took him to the Outback Steakhouse.
Yeah.
They bought him
said, what would happen if...
and say can you sketch out some things?
And he just puked on his placemat, and that's what they used for that final scene.
Yeah, this looks like garbage.
It's really
death.
And then he goes back to the future, right? Mm-hmm. And back in the future, what do we get? Well,
his wife's still alive. He has a 10-year-old son, even though he has no idea who they
idea who that kid is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Also, bold prediction that cars could just drive. He goes, "Aren't you late?" Bruce McGill goes, "Aren't you late? Why are you still here?" And he goes, "Right, I am late for something. Take me home, car?" And
2004, apparently self-driving cars were a thing.
It would have been interesting. Nick and I obviously have kids, and to miss out on 10 years of a child's growth, that's a huge amount of time.
I'm sure every parent would love to not have the first 2 years of shitty diapers.
You don't even know who this child is.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
this kid is
there's no memory whatsoever.
It would be interesting if it hit him all at once, and he had a moment in the car where
maybe.
Or something.
And I thought about that, but then I thought it might have been even better from a movie point of view. Like if Mia Sara had seen him walk up and sees a confused look on his face, "Oh, you're back."
Yeah.
Or something like that, acknowledging that this isn't the same person she's been with for the past 10 years.
What was it, 50 First Dates, where there's a tape he has to watch to remember everything?
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping it would be like a possible future movie, Frequency, where the guy has two sets of memories after he changes the past. You remember that movie, right, Jeremy?
Yeah,
I don't think
not much of it.
No,
not good.
It wasn't very memorable.
That's fair enough. But anyway, it ends on this old Victorian, and that's kind of the movie.
Yeah, he hugs his kid. He says, "Yes, I'm here to barbecue hot dogs," just like Mom promised. Even though I have no memory of that promise.
We Belgians love to do,
make the hot dogs.
Barbecuing hot dogs? Once I've been cooking by myself for 10 years. I know what the best French fries are.
Do you like ramen, child?
That's right. and that's, by the way, we never addressed the fact that he lived anywhere. I imagine him living in a tent where the house was. Because the house blew up. It's not like he rebuilt it. He's I am single. My bachelor pad is out somewhere in Washington, D.C., I guess.
Again, a pad he could not have afforded on a cop's salary.
Well, he's a future cop now.
I would say future cops are probably paid pretty well because
he's federal government for starters.
Yeah.
Well, A, and 2, as my father would say, if you don't pay him too well enough, they end up doing future crime, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in Fairfax, then, that's where his apartment is.
That's fair. He has a very nice place near the Pentagon, right? Somewhere in Maryland, or, Newport News or something. He's not there, but he's fine.
He's close enough.
Well, if you had a self-driving car, I wouldn't mind being further away from work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, John, final thoughts?
Like I said earlier, I had apparently never seen this movie before I watched it recently. And it was okay for early, mid-90s action with Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's got great fight scenes. The plot's just kind of bleh. Very paint by numbers. It's okay.
Daniel hated it.
It's the cinematic equivalent of a shiny object being waved in front of your face. You might look at it and be like, "Ooh, that's entered for 2 seconds," and then the more you think about it, it's like, well, why? There's so much about this plot that doesn't make any sense. And I say if you're going to go for a JCVD movie, go with Hard Target, because at least that was stylish.
Bloodsport.
Or Kickboxer.
Jeremy.
I love this movie. I saw it when I was a kid, loved it then, saw it now, and there's so many more things I can appreciate from a script point. It's surprisingly well constructed. It has some witty lines, and obviously the whole plot to buy the presidency probably flew over my head. But
You control time.
yeah.
Why is your end goal to buy the presidency?
It's better than building a space laser, I guess.
Don't you know, John?
Yes.
Flanders controls all.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I love this movie. It's JCVD is not a good actor, but you're here to watch him kick, and he does that splendidly. Ron Silver is amazing in it, and yeah, it's just a really fun movie, and yeah, I just love it.
Yeah, I mean, and considering I know what we're going to watch next, which I remember thinking was mediocre at the time. I'm not even going to say what it is because it's Patreon only, so fuck you guys. But this movie, I'm with Jeremy, man. This was a breath of fresh air.
Mhm.
I don't think I'd seen this movie in more than a decade, maybe 20 years. It's been a while, but this is a genre which doesn't exist anymore. Like, it is a fun action movie in a way that, again, like, The Expendables tries, but there's too much ego there. Like, that's fucking stupid space prison movie with, like, Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and then the new one has, like, Dave Bautista in it. Like, those are terrible. Like, this is right in my zone. And, like, this is now, because, again, I hadn't seen it in forever, and I remember liking it. This will enter the rotation with things like Roadhouse and Commando, where it's just, what do I do? I'm gonna pour myself a whiskey and watch this movie. It's 90 minutes, guys.
Roadhouse is a goddamn masterpiece, and I won't hear a word against it.
I'm not. I'm saying, like, this scratches that itch. It's just like, you know what he's gonna do? He's gonna jump in the air, do a flying split to avoid getting electrocuted. I mean, like, what else do you fucking want, guys?
And before we stop,
yeah,
this was part of a trilogy or part of a series.
What?
Oh boy.
So
Well, it was originally a comic book.
it was a comic,
Yeah.
and I think it was devised as part of a series. But I mean, I just looked it up because I remember reading as part of the research in this. Timecop 2, the Berlin Decision, was a 2003.
are there Nazis in
Movie?
that one?
Jason Scott Lee as the Timecop.
Oh boy.
Oh my!
You know it's a good script when you can't get JCVD back.
Well, it was also 20 years later, or 10 years.
What is he
later,
doing
yeah.
now? Excuse me.
Yeah.
He actually had this great show on Amazon Prime that they canceled after 6 episodes, but that was really
Splits.
funny. I think it was just called
Like Jean-Claude Van Johnson.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
So, while we're wrapping this up here, next week we're going to cover 2004's King Arthur. And I'm going to say that as 2004's King Arthur because since then, somehow there's been like 9 other things called King Arthur. So 2004 starring Clive Owen, the man who never was.
Is this the one where they back in the day photoshopped Keira Knightley's boobs so
Yes.
they look bigger?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
And
boy.
also there's no horses because it's supposed to be sent like just after the Roman Empire.
I'm gonna have issue with that. But anyway, carry on.
No, but like that's what they do. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
you are right. And also there's sort of magic.
Yes.
It's a mess.
With I believe Sam Neill as Merlin,
I believe you're right.
which totally makes sense.
And
Better movie.
I don't usually go 2 episodes out, but on the 21st, there's a special episode where Cineprov is going to do an episode on Dick Tracy, but it's also going to be our recorded riff of Dick Tracy using the people of Cineprov to do a riff on the movie.
Oh.
So stay tuned in January to hear us record the episode, and if you're a member of our Patreon $8 tier, you will also hear the Cineprov exclusive riff, or you can pay $5 for just that specific riff on the Cineprov page. So stay tuned next week and every future week when we put Pastor of Your Trial, and thank you guys for listening. I'm going to go have a beer and eat some pizza. Woo. Thanks, guys. Myopia Movies is a production of Dude Letter Podcasting. It is hosted by Nick Hoffman, edited by Nick Hoffman and Daniel Settis. The theme song is Surf Shimmy by Kevin MacLeod. Find his music on Comtech.com. It is registered under the Creative 4 license. Our regular panelists are Matthew Quinn, Daniel Settis, Nick Hoffman, and Jeremy Rigel. Thanks for listening. Please support our Patreon at patreon.com/myopia. Thanks, guys.